This is Buying Miami, Life, Love, and Real Estate, and I am your host, Joanne Jones. I'm a second-generation Miamian, and I am obsessed with real estate, and also living your best life here in the best city, Miami. I'm really excited to have you guys here today. I have Rudy and Joelle from More Lending, and Rudy and I have been working together for like years now. And when I was putting the book together, the book started off, the book is Buying Miami, the must-have guide to purchasing a home. It's on Amazon. When I put it together, I wanted to kind of create an essay for the buying process for buyers because I spent a lot of time explaining it. And then I'm like, whoa, I should have Rudy explain the mortgage process. And so I sent him a bunch of questions, and he came back and he basically wrote the mortgage section of the book. So if you guys get the book and you see it, it's from Rudy. So what I wanted to talk about today is, I guess, the questions, the things that we spend a lot of time talking to new buyers about, or buyers who are going to be getting a loan on their property in order to make that purchase. And back in the day, a few years ago, I used to be able to take buyers out with a pre-approval. But it's gotten so competitive now, and we're competing against other buyers that are cash buyers. And even in my own time, when I bought my condo a couple years ago, the seller, who was also a realtor, she insisted that I get a loan approval. She didn't want to see a loan. She didn't want a pre-approval. She didn't want to even see my offer without a pre-approval. She wanted a loan approval. That actually set me back like 2 weeks because I had to she wanted a desktop underwriter. We call it a DU. Correct me if I'm wrong, because you guys are the experts. But from what I understand, a pre-approval is basically when they look at your bank account, your pay stubs, your taxes, and they're like, okay, yeah, based on what we see here, you're pre-approved for X amount. But a DU, which is, again, correct me if I'm wrong, a loan approval where we have approved you for a loan up to, let's say, $1 million. I'm just making that up. And that is a little bit more stronger, right?
That's correct. The pre-approval, basically what we're looking at is the income, the assets. We're looking at their citizenship. We want to make sure that we have the initial details there that we can move forward, that there is a loan here. Mm-hmm. Now, you're right. The market has shifted. And due to that shift, most sellers and realtors, they want proof. They just don't want to go off a letter that any mortgage broker or any mortgage lender can say you are pre-approved. No, they want actually something that has gone through a process or an algorithm. And the process is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have their own desktop underwriters. Uh-huh. Fannie Mae has desktop underwriter, which is the DU that you're speaking about. But there's also the concept where Freddie Mac, has loan prospector, which is LP. So you have DU and LP, which is desktop underwriter, loan prospector. They're both the hear all say all for the actual approval. And what that's taken into consideration is we're registering the loan, we're ordering credit, so they're analyzing the actual credit. It's basically an underwriter behind the scenes that is analyzing the credit. They're looking at the income, they're verifying assets, and they're determining through their system that this buyer qualifies. So now when you put a contract in, you have your contract. And if you're going to sign the contract, well, now you have an LP or a DU, and that it has more weight, basically. It basically says that they've gone through the process and they're ready to go.
All right. Well, I have another question, though. When I got that DU, it had a lot of personal information on it. I mean, a lot of personal information. And I'm like, yikes, I really don't want to give this personal information out. What do you recommend? I mean, do you ever have this situation where people are like, okay, I got a great DU, I'm approved for $1 million, I'm ready to go, I'm going to go house shopping this weekend. Is there another document that a buyer can present to a potential seller that shows that they have been approved for a loan without giving them the actual DU that has all their personal information? Has that ever come up?
Not necessarily, because most buyers right now, because because of the way the market is, they want to make sure, the buyers themselves want to make sure that they're qualified. So I haven't come across, I've been doing this 30 years. Joelle's been doing it for quite some time now.
They just give them the DU?
Yeah.
And they redact information?
They want to make sure. I mean, you as a buyer, would you not want to guarantee to yourself that you qualify?
No. I'm saying like, okay, say like I have a DU, right? I have it, I'm approved. I wonder if you could provide, instead of actually giving the seller the report with all of your personal information, if there is like a letter that you can get from your loan, like an approval letter that kind of saves your personal information from getting out there, that basically says, yes, he is approved and we're just waiting for him to send us a contract so we can continue with the loan process.
Well, it doesn't. The DU and the LP, they don't normally, they're not going to detail the social security number. It's not going to list social security number. It's not going to list your active bank accounts. It's just going to say that it has certain sections, and it has an income section, it has a credit section, it has an asset section, and it's going to state that you've met those qualifications. But it's not going to give any detailed information or personal information that's going to put you at risk. So no, that doesn't happen. So
all right.
Some cool stuff that banks offer that we actually offer as well in house is a step above the DU, right? So in a lot of cases, the DU is an automated underwriting system. So Rudy did mention an underwriter, but that underwriter is the system. There's not an actual person detailing and going through the findings of anything that you put in there. So in a lot of cases, the DU could be generated by the LO himself to put in the correct information that they need to get an approved, to get the offer accepted, right? But we offer something that goes a little bit above and beyond that. We actually offer an initial underwrite where an actual underwriter takes a look at the income and assets and makes an observation and actually gives you an approval based on the income and assets for a TBD property based on this amount.
What's TBD?
TBD is to be determined. So we don't have a property. Yeah, my bad. I'm sorry. Yeah. So a TBD is to be determined. So if you're out there shopping and you're like, oh my God, all my offers are getting beat. Well, I'm like, hey, listen, why don't I actually get you an approval, a legitimate approval? We're not talking about a DU. We're talking about an approval from an underwriter based on your income and assets that you are approved for this home.
Yeah, that's what they need.
You can start going out there. You actually get a few benefits from this, right? The first benefit is you're actually approved from an actual underwriter. I didn't fake a DU that you can get denied, because if something changes that I didn't really see, and something happened, you can still get a denial.
Sure.
Even with the DU. But if you go in there, you actually have an approval from an underwriter. So it's not going to fail, right? Number two, what you have is you already have the first step of the underwriting process. So you're actually like almost a week ahead.
Because, you're saving time.
Yeah, you're saving time. So you're actually closing time is quicker. Your loan commitment time is quicker as well. So it gives you that upper edge when it comes to it. And then you also have the ammunition where you can call a listing agent and say, hey, like, do you want to close for sure? Yeah. Okay, great. Here's my buyer's offer.
So in this day and age, how long, if a buyer has a loan approval already and they just have to find a property, once they find the property and they, turn in that fully executed contract, how long is it taking you guys to close the loan?
Normally, our turn times are normally less than 30 days. I mean, we average anywhere between 21 to 30 days to get loan from start to finish closed. From the turn, if it's something that we already have in the system and it's pre-approved or we have it registered and it's approved subject to TBD, it's just a matter of submitting the contract, ordering the appraisal, and we can get that back within 7 days. So it's a quick process.
I think another thing that holds that up sometimes is if they're buying a condo or a townhouse, and when you have to deal with associations, that's another thing that could, affect the timeline of the deal. I mean, if they're buying a single family home and there's no association, then that's one less step. But if they're buying, like so many people are buying condos, I mean, we have more condos in South Florida and townhomes than we do homes. So most people are buying condos. And that opens up a whole other can of worms, because what I find I explain to people a lot is that not only do you, the buyer, has to get approved, but the property that you're buying has to get approved as well. So I remember a couple of years ago, this guy drove me nuts. He was trying to buy an investment property for 5% down. And I'm just like, bro, you can't do that. Like, please tell me I want I want a mortgage broker that can do that. Please tell me who it is. And they just don't understand. So another thing is, or even explaining to people like, oh, I want to get an FHA loan. I want to buy a condo on the beach. And it's like, you can't buy a condo on the beach for 5% down. So can you guys explain a little bit more about when you're buying condos or townhouses, why those particular types of properties require more money down and they can't really get it. I mean, not to say there's always going to be that broker out there that's like, I know that this condo in Coral Gables accepts 5% down. So there are the exceptions to the rules. But for the most part, if you're going to buy a condo, especially a condo, you're going to need to put like 15 to 20 to 25% down. I know for me, I had to put 25% down and I didn't have it. I had to get a second mortgage for that extra. I had 15% down and then I had to get a second for the other part. So anyways, that's what happened to me. So let's talk about percentages down. Why do you have to put so much down?
So condos are very this is always so funny. I always have to explain this all the time.
All the time. That's why we're doing it here.
So condos really, they have to have what's called a reserve requirement, right? That's just a very basic reserve requirement. What that means is that the condominium operates on a budget, okay? Because when you pay that HOA monthly fee, that's referred to as income to the association that is housing those condominiums, right? So then they have to plan out a budget, right? Because the association by law is not allowed to take any profit from its people. The association is there to serve the tenants and the people and the community. So that income is supposed to be spent correctly, which is why they prepare a budget. Where is all your income that you're collecting on the year being allocated?
Sure.
And that shows that, right? It goes into saying expenses, maintenance, you're paying the people, the administration that are working there, all these different items. Yeah, insurance, just a ton of different items that you got to pay for a condominium because it's huge. You got to, there's maintenance there. There has to be a certain fund allocated to reserves, right? So that reserves has to have a special allocation on the budget to show how much are you putting from this yearly budget into reserves. Reserves are basically if anything goes wrong, that you have the money to back it up, prepare, do whatever. Banks, mortgage lenders, mortgage banks, Fannie Mae, they require that a condominium have 10% of their budget in reserve.
So many buildings don't. And isn't there like a new law that says that there's a law that is going to come online soon that says that is going to require buildings to have reserves, right?
For the most part, you need to have them because just what Joelle said, if something comes up where you have an assessment or anything like that, and you don't have the reserves, then how are they going to pay for it? The only way to pay for it, exactly. And that costs money to the buyer, to the individual, to the borrowers, so you don't want that. And you, as a buyer, you want to know, okay, because this is one of the most important things, especially with the condo, and I'm glad you brought it up. It's not just the reserve. You also have to take into consideration how many units are owner occupied, how many units are investments, how many units are second homes.
Correct.
Because it's not only Fannie and Freddie who are governing this. Each bank has an overlay, and a bank can decide whether or not they want to impose an overlay and say, you know what, our requirement isn't 10%, our requirement is 15% because they just don't want to do condos. Or they're too concentrated and they've done too many condos in Miami or Miami Beach or wherever it is, and they impose their own overlays over the governing agency. So that sometimes it comes into play. In addition, with reserves, you have the reserves, you have the percentage of ownership. They take one of the biggest, and the biggest probably, is litigation. If there's any litigation,
deal killer.
And and that's huge because you don't know how long it's going to take. You don't know what's coming behind it. So normally lenders will say no, and they'll pass on it. So
especially if it's structural damage, 400%.
Yeah, absolutely.
But one thing that I want to add on that, right, is when you're a buyer and you are kind of thinking to yourself, why do the banks care about reserves? Like what is it? Like, why do the banks care? Why do they have so many strict policies? Why do they have all this? You have to understand that banks are in the business of making money, right? Banks are not in the business of losing the home. Banks are not in the business of lending you 95% of the value of a property just so it can fall through and they gain 5%. That's not their business model, right? So they have to make sure that they're well protected in that area. If a building, for any reason, if anything happens to that building and the association does not have the money to give to the bank to return it to them because, hey, I just lost the loan that I had was against this specific property. If this property collapses, the building falls. And he's like, hey, condo, how are you going to pay us? There's no more building. The bank does no longer collect the mortgage. You're not paying a mortgage on a house you don't have, So that's how you as a buyer have to think about it, the mentality of coming in when you come in to purchase anything, any type of unit whatsoever. How is the bank going to be protected? That's the way that they're going to approve you based on the property.
Right.
The percentages on condo, normally you're looking at minimum 15% down. That's for the most part and most lenders in right now. Now you will have and you will come across certain lenders that will all of a sudden change their guideline and say, you know what, we're going to do 10% down or we're going to do 5% down.
I've seen them.
They can do it.
Sure.
Now, those are loans normally that they're not going to sell to Fannie Mae and they're not going to sell to Freddie Mac because they're not going to buy them. So those are loans that they warehouse and they're going to hold those loans.
Right.
So you will see a lender from time to time do something crazy as to that just to generate some influx of loans into that particular lender. So
Pro tip to buyers that if you are going to look for a condo and you're going to mortgage it, tell your agent in the search under terms to not include properties that are cash only. Right? Because then what happens is, and for those of you who are listening through anywhere that's not Miami, we are like, I am a hardcore Miami, and you guys are born and raised in Miami.
Yes.
I mean, I'm American, but what we call goño carajos. What is a goño carajo? All right. A goño carajo is when you see a property and you're like, ay, goño, it's so cheap. And then you read the fine print and you see that it's cash only, and you're like, "Ay, carajo." Yeah.
Yep,
So,
I like
right? That's a goño carajo. Because see, in Miami street slang, like if you see a really hot guy or a person from far away, and you're like, "Ay, goño," and then they get closer and they're ugly and they're like, so that. But a goño carajo could be anything that you see that you think is great, and then you look closer and it's not so great.
Absolutely.
So. That has happened to my buyers a lot. So when I have a buyer that's looking for a property that is, they're going to be getting a mortgage, I always make sure that I take out cash only so they don't get those properties, because then they're going to get excited, because usually the reason why they're so cheap is because they're cash only and they can't get approved for a mortgage.
Another pro tip when you're looking for condos specifically, and you can back me up here, Joanne, I would say tell your agent, if they're not already, the first thing you're doing when you're looking for a condo that you're interested in, check the terms, the remarks, and check if it says has reserves. If there's no mention of anything of reserves, the first thing you have to ask your agent is to get you a copy of your budget, of the budget for that association, and send it to your lender right away.
Okay, but you have to understand, it's such a pain in the ass to get a copy of the budgets. The budgets they're not going to give you the budget until you have a fully executed contract. So, I mean, it's great in theory. And if your listing agent is, awesome like I am, and she has the budget already before I start getting properties, when I get the listing, one of the things that I do is I get all the condo docs and I put them in a Google Drive, and, I put everything there so I can just send them to people.
Supposed to do.
Yeah. I mean, I get a little geeked out about it, but not all agents are awesome, and they don't even think to get the condo docs or the financials until they have a fully executed contract and they have a buyer looking for them. So it's not that easy to get the financials.
We actually have an ace up our sleeves. So
a what? Oh,
we have an ace up our sleeves. So we have certain relationships that we've developed closely with these lenders. And one of the first things that I personally do, and we tell our staff to do, is once you find out the property and you know it's a condo, the first thing that we do is we get on the phone and we call the lender and we say, hey, here's the building. We're looking at this particular unit. Do you have an issue with this building?
Yeah.
A lot of times they know from the start whether or not they're lending in that building, whether or not they want to lend in that building. In some cases, they've lent too much in that building and they don't want to lend anymore at this particular point. So we tend to do that, and that helps because I can tell you right from the start whether I want to, lend in that building or not, by just making a quick phone call. And realtors appreciate that, and buyers appreciate that. Certain buildings aren't just regular condos. Some of them are condo hotels.
Right.
So that's different too, because not every lender will lend on a condo hotel. True. We have certain lenders that do, and they have their own guidelines in place because that's a loan that you're going to warehouse. That's a loan that's not sold on the secondary market or anything like that. So those particular lenders are boutique lenders that tend to do those loans. So,
well, another thing that I do is if my buyer knows for sure that they want to be in this particular building and we've narrowed it down to that, then I will look at the past sales for like the last year. And I can see on the full view how it closed. Did it close with conventional or cash only, or how did the buyer purchase a property? And then if I see that it closed conventional, then I'll call that buyer's agent and be like, hey, who was the lender?
Very smart.
That's another thing that I've learned to do too. So that's something that a buyer can ask their agent to do, to look at.
There was another pro tip.
Another pro tip.
Wow,
yeah, stick
really
with me.
Good.
Stick with
the
me, kids.
Agents too.
Yeah.
And I mean, listen, also the cash only thing. If you have a buyer that is really focused on a unit and the unit says cash only, listen, it never hurts to go to your mortgage lender like us, because if they have a healthy enough of a down payment, odds are we're probably going to be able to find them financing, because you got to find that reason. Why is it cash only? Like, why? Because we work with numerous banks, from private, hard, non-conforming, conforming. We work with a ton of different banks that allow us to go in different areas. So we're always going to be focused on, hey, this is the reason that you do it, but they have a 30% down payment. Are you willing to make an exception on this property?
Right.
And be like, yeah, because, for example, I'll give you an example. If the litigation that we had, right, it was structural damage, right? But one bank said, if the building has any structural damage, we're not accepting at all. The other bank said, as long as the actual subject unit itself doesn't have any structural damage, we take it as is.
Now that goes into play because each unit is different. Each building is different, because you can go in, let's say you're coming in with 25% down, or you're coming in with 30% down, like you said. 30% down, now that requires for all lenders, including Fannie and Freddie, that's a limited review. So it's a different form, a different condo questionnaire that gets filled out. It's not your full condo questionnaire that has all the details and everything that they're looking for. On a limited review, you might get away with no reserves.
Right.
You might get away with a litigation not partaking to structural damage. So there is ways to get it.
Well, and also the more you put down, the less, I guess,
the less risk
requirements.
The bank has.
The less
it's
requirements.
It's all
less a risk.
Again, we're going back to it. It's all a risk factor for the bank.
Right. Well, the other thing is that I want to talk about the condo questionnaire. What is it? And I find myself educating people a lot on this. So the condo questionnaire is basically the questionnaire that the lender, or you, the buyer, is going to give to the condo association, and it's a questionnaire that they have to fill out to find out, the disposition of the building, and based on that questionnaire is what the lender uses to qualify that building on whether or not they're going to lend you or give you the loan to buy that building. So I usually try to get the condo questionnaire done as quickly as possible, but with it, I try to get it done as soon as the buyer knows for sure that they want to buy this property. So I always say in Miami, like, you put an offer in and then you decide if you want it, buy it. People hate it when I say that, but that's the truth, because we have the inspection period and you can cancel.
Absolutely.
So
100%.
As soon as the buyer knows for sure that they want to move forward with this loan and with this purchase, that's when I fire off the condo questionnaire. And this is an expense that the buyer is going to have to pay for out of their pocket. It's usually anywhere from $250 to $400, sometimes up to $500. The condo questionnaire doesn't fly. Unfortunately, they're out that money.
Cost of doing business.
When you think about it, it's something that you want from the beginning. Just like you want the DU and the LP, you want to make sure the building qualifies. Why are you purchasing in a building that you're not going to be able to get any financing?
Of course.
And you're going to have to come in cash. So definitely something that you should do in the initial stages, without a doubt.
And listen, before you lay out that money, find out if from your mortgage broker, from your agent, if you can get a loan, if you have a good probability of getting a loan on that property. There's enough, due diligence that you could do to see if that building has any issues.
100%. But again, the condo questionnaire lays out certain things that you wouldn't really know, like a litigation question.
Sure.
You're not going to know if it has a litigation, because that's not just public information that they're telling you about. I always tell my buyers, if you're looking for an investment, whatever kind of property you're looking for, there's a cost of doing business that unfortunately may not help you out. And I'll give you a relatable tip to myself. I'm actually in the process of looking for an investment property myself. And I've been putting in offers here and there. I think I've put in about 3 offers already, done 3 inspections already that have run me up $1,200.
Yep.
And each property comes back with a problem. But guess what? That's just the cost of doing business. You have to factor that into your home search, your home look. And if you are secluded to just looking for condos, the condo questionnaire is going to be a problem in there too,
Usually, and that's the other thing I wanted to talk briefly about, is that not only do you have your down payment to think about, but you also have your cost of doing business. So you're going to have to pay for your inspection, which is going to be a few $100s. If you're looking at a condo, you're going to have to pay for the condo questionnaire. You're going to have your closing costs, which is usually, I say, figure 2% of the asking price, would you say, is usually the cost that you're going to have to pay to obtain your mortgage and to close the loan and transfer ownership from the current seller to the new owner. So all of that is another expense that a lot of buyers don't realize that they need to have. They're like, okay, I got $20,000 to put down. And it's like, bro, you need another 10.
Yeah.
There's things to consider. You have your initial down payment, you have your closing costs. All that gets detailed in a loan estimate at the beginning, so you know what you're dealing with. But you also have to take into consideration what the lenders are looking for. Reserves. Depending on the loan and the type of loan that you get, whether it's a bank statement loan or it's a fully docked loan, you'll have in certain cases where you may not have any reserve requirement. you may have 2 months reserves according to the DU or LP. It'll detail what reserves this particular buyer or your particular buyer will have.
Now, when you say reserves, you mean like money that the buyer has to put aside for upcoming expenses?
Not aside. It's very you're always gonna provide 2 months bank statements normally on when you're qualifying for a loan. So the lender wants to make sure that you have among your assets shown you have your initial down payment, you have your closing costs covered, and reserves for them is considered that you have money there that's sitting there. It can be sitting in a 401k, in stocks, in liquidity, checking your savings. They just want to make sure that you have, let's say, 2 months worth of the monthly payment just in case something happens. So
so extra money sitting in the bank, like on the side there.
Correct, but it's nothing that you have to place or put anywhere. It's sitting in your account wherever you have it. It's assets.
And also, if you're an independent contractor, like for me, like I don't get a paycheck every week. God knows, I wish I did. But if you're an independent contractor, then you need to have 2 years worth of taxes as well.
It's so many. Okay, so independent contractor goes into so many different categories. So
or a small business owner or business owner.
Yeah, but okay. So for example, if I'm just going to give you an example here on FHA, right? If you were a W-2 person in the similar field the year before, and then you do 1 year of being self-employed as an independent contractor, you can actually just go based off that 1 year. So everybody always tells you, hey, you have to have 2 years tax returns. That's not the case in everything. So I guess if you're an independent contractor, there's multiple programs that we offer that don't even utilize your tax returns. One of the biggest hacks that I like to give my self-employed people is utilizing the bank statement program, where we really take, you don't have to do your taxes. So the reason behind being an independent contractor is because you want to get tax deductions and you want to own your own business, right? The freedom and the tax deductions, I think are huge benefits, right? So if you take to yourself, hey, I don't want to do this, but I want to buy a home, Uncle Sam's like, yeah, you can't buy a home unless you give me my money, and then you're like, hey, why not? Why do that, right? Why not instead utilize a 12 to 24 month bank statement deposit history to qualify you for income? Yeah, your down payment may have to be a little bit bigger than you would on a regular conventional loan. But how I always say that is, hey, would you rather not put your money towards your equity on a home that is yours? Or do you want to pay Uncle Sam more money so you can get a lower down payment on your property?
The best way to help self-employed borrowers. When you're self-employed, I mean, do you want to say that all your income is there and you are detailing all your income, but you have expenses to write off. So when you write off the expenses, now your tax returns are no use to you. So in the non-QM sector, we have certain lenders that will have that program. They allow you to use your 12 months business or personal bank statements, 12 to 24 months. You also have just a P&L program where you just provide a profit and loss. We also have a 1099 program where you just provide your 1099 and you don't need the bank statements and you don't need tax returns. So there is a way to get qualified. I mean, it has loosened up from what we were experiencing in the past, where we were just dealing with Fannie and Freddie to get the loans. The non-QM lenders have come back into play, and it has allowed buyers to now get into homes that they didn't think they could. So,
and I got to tell you, that's why I always send my clients to you guys. I always send.
Thank you.
As a mortgage broker, you broker mortgages. So you could sit down and you could, figure out what the person's financial disposition is, and you can match them with the lender that is going to best serve them, as opposed to going directly to your bank, which so many people are like, oh, I'm going to go directly to my bank. And I'm like, I can't curse. I'm trying not to curse, apparently it's frowned upon, but I'm like, because first of all, that institution is only going to have whatever loan programs, like the 3 or 4 that they have. And then they're like, oh yeah, you have a guy in New York that's like, oh yeah, I could approve you for the loan. And then at the end of the day, you're buying a place in Miami and they don't know the nuances of buying Miami property. And so when we get down into the 3rd or 4th week and it turns out that, this guy at this major bank, he can't approve this loan. Yeah. And maybe they promise them the world, but then at the end of the day, they can't do it. I always like to send my clients to a mortgage broker. And like you guys, I've sent everyone to you, because you can sit down and talk to them and figure out what their situation is and match them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're going to take into consideration. I mean, from the start, we're going to make sure that if there's a loan in place, we're going to find it. And you know, it really everything is case by case. There is no cookie cutter buyer. There is no cookie cutter. I mean, for the normal, everybody's different because you all have different FICOs. You all have different reserves. You're all putting different down payments, and you're all looking for different houses. So a buyer is a buyer. Now, being able to figure out, okay, what do they qualify for? Do they qualify for this property? And then figuring out which is the correct loan for them is the most important thing. So yeah, we have the ability we're a mortgage broker, but we're a mortgage lender. So we provide financing using our own funds. So we are a lender, but we also broker because we need to have that relationship in place for these type of deals and these type of buyers. So
yeah, I have a very, very strict belief that in my line right now, the way I am and the way the market is right now, that honestly, I will exhaust every resource before I can tell you, hey, there's just not an option for you. Yeah. Because this is my goal. Listen, you may not like the option that's presented to you. You may not, but I'm giving you a solution. That's what I tell you. It's like, hey, listen, you have, you may want to put down this 10% on this investment property, right? Or let's just say, right? Let's say, hey, you may want to put down 20%, less than 20% on this investment property. The unfortunate case is that you got to put down 25 based on your credit, based on your, and this is the best solution for you. And I know in my head, hey, I'm giving you a solution you can take if you want the property. You may not want to, but here's the solution. Or you may say, hey, Joel, I want to buy a $2 million property, but I only have 10% down and my credit is whatever. We actually, our partner right now is working on a deal in that capacity that he has had to place with, I think, 2 or 3 different lenders just for the fact that when a lender gives him a hump, he immediately does not give up anymore and says, oh, no, it's not done. He calls another lender and all of our partners that we work with and say, hey, this is the hump that I hit with this people. Can you get over that hump? Right. Yeah, we can. Boom. Perfect.
And
let's do it. And we did. And he's in the office right now still working that deal that I believe 5 other banks and lenders have said no to. So there's always a solution for your lending problem. So if you go to your bank or you go to somebody and they say no, just treat it like a doctor. Go get a second opinion. Go get a second opinion from another mortgage broker, another person. And until they give you multiple no's, don't give up.
And usually it's no because of the same thing. But I got to tell you, for a buyer, all of this is so overwhelming. We do this all day long, so we're kind of immune to it. But this is why it's really important when you're buying a property to get your team together. Get your realtor, get your mortgage broker, and put them in touch. Like the first thing, we have a guy yesterday, I sent you a guy, and let's just call him Louis. I told him, I'm like, hey, Louis, whoever you decide, because I think he's talking to you and a couple other people that he didn't find through me. But I'm like, whoever you decide, let me talk to that person and let us, me and the mortgage broker, we'll figure it out. We speak the same language. So I'll know, okay, based on what you're going to give him, what type of properties, what do I need to stay away from? What type of loan are you going to give him? And, use your professionals. Buying a property is a big, fat, scary thing for some people. So just get good people around you and let them talk and do their job and let you have fun, finding the perfect property where you're going to live your life.
By the way, Joanne, Louis has completed his online application, just so you know.
So, fantastic.
And we're calling him Louis. But
we're going to call him Louis. But
I'm going to leave you with one pro tip before we leave.
Okay.
We were talking about you wanted to get those cash buyers out of the way. And Joanne, if you come across a cash buyer, we have in place delayed financing where get your property, lock in that property, close on your property. And as long as we can structure a loan within 6 months, the lender will treat that as a purchase. Yeah. So you can turn around and let's say you have to front your money for a property because you're bidding, you want to make sure you get into this property, you pay over cost or whatever you need to do in order to secure that property, but you close on it using your own cash. Now we can turn around and refinance that property. It's treated as a purchase. Okay, which helps you, takes the benefits of not being a refinance, and you get your money back.
Listen, I know so many wealthy people that pay money. They put money into a property, and then within 6 months they get that money out because that's tax-free money. You don't pay on debt.
You don't pay on. You don't pay on loans.
Pay on debt.
You don't pay on loans.
They buy a and they just move their money around. Okay, well, listen, I could stay talking to you guys easily for another half an hour, but people have short attention spans. So,
well, last pro tip before we do leave that I want to say is, and I want to stress it, guys. I will always recommend if you're using a real estate professional or mortgage professional, whoever you're using, try to stay in the same circle. There is nothing better than a transaction where the lender, the real estate agent, the inspector, and all the parties have a nice relationship, because that is what creates excellence in this market. So make sure that your listing agent, your buying agent, everybody's on the same side, because that will make your transaction 100 times smoother.
Well, it's smoother for you too, because at the end of the day, it's like, let us do our jobs for you.
Exactly.
Right.
Like I said, Louis, put me in touch with your mortgage broker as soon as you decide which one you want to go with, so I can get in and talk to him and make this smooth, So much more to talk about. Never enough time. But I cover all of this and more in Buying Miami, the must-have guide to purchasing a home. So if that's something you're interested in, you can get it on Amazon. I recorded the book, so I'm going to be uploading the audio version of the book soon. Thank you so much for helping me with the book, Rudy.
Absolutely.
And for coming and talking about it.
Absolutely.
And for anybody who's out there looking for a mortgage broker, I definitely highly recommend More Lending. It's MOR, and we'll put all of their information in the bio in the bottom of the link or whatever. And that's it. I want more time, but there's not enough more time. So thank you guys
so much for the opportunity, Joanne, and we're here to serve you. So
absolutely, Joanne. Thank you. Next time I will have you on my show. We can do this all together. Yeah.
All right.
We can keep this conversation going.
All right. All right, guys. Thanks. We'll see you next time. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening to this episode of Buying Miami, Life, Love, and Real Estate. You can find it wherever you look for your podcasts. So we're on Spotify and Apple and Amazon and everywhere else. So definitely log on, link, click, love us, follow us. And that's it. That's all.